Your communication hub and literary arts center of SDO Isabela. SDO English Academy.
An analogy describes the relationship between words. Subject, verb, or teacher.
One hand. English Academy.
Tayo na sa Radyo Eskwela. Tayo na!
A joyful and exciting day, grade 10 learners! How are you coping with everything? I hope it's going smoothly because life has to go on and we have to keep moving forward. So, keep nurturing your minds amidst this pandemic by tuning in to your favorite learning station, SDO Isabela's Radyo Eskwela. I am Teacher Rosalyn, your radio teacher in this grade 10 English episode. Buckle up and let's make this day full of learning!
Yay!
First, let's check your readiness for today's session. Are you on your most convenient and safest place?
Yes, ma'am.
Great! Can you hear me well?
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful! Are your notes, papers, and pen ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Nice! How about your mindset?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing! And don't forget to smile!
All right.
There! Perfect! I guess you are now ready, so let the fun learning begin.
Yay!
Before we proceed with today's topic, let's reassess what you have learned in our previous episode. Ready?
Oh, yeah!
Let's go! What have you learned last time? Good! It's about critiquing a literary selection based on Marxism and feminism. Can you describe the Marxist approach? Nice one! It scrutinizes the text as an expression of contemporary class struggles. It is grounded on Karl Marx's theories concerning the insinuations and snags of the capitalist system. What about the feminist approach then? Good! It examines the text in the context of recognizing women's knowledge in literary concepts and in terms of valuing their experiences. While reading a text, a feminist literary critic contests traditional standards or outlooks. Alright, let's try to identify samples. Are you up for the challenge?
Yes, ma'am.
Good! Just identify which literary approach is being used. Ready?
Oh, yeah.
Brilliant! Here it goes! Diana analyzes the different standpoints that women try to suggest to uplift everyone's spirit. What is it? You are right! It's feminist approach. Next, Marlon scrutinizes both political and social conditions of the literary work. This is great! It's Marxist approach. Wow, so attentive. Keep up the good work.
Yay!
How was your critiquing last time? Did you find it amusing? Which among the critical approaches did you find the easiest? Structuralism, formalism, moralism, Marxism, or feminism? Whoa! Interesting! Anyway, today will be another critiquing day for you, dear grade 10 learners.
Okay.
But don't you worry! I'll be guiding you all along as you learn further ways on how to critique literary works.
All right.
I know it will be a piece of cake this time because you have tried it many times already. Just keep tuning in, jot down notes, and try accomplishing the exercise given.
Oh yeah.
Today, we'll be adding 2 more approaches in critiquing literary selections. And these are the historical and reader response approaches. Are you excited with historical approach?
Yes, ma'am.
Learners, this approach insisted that to understand a literary piece, we need to understand the author's biography and social background, ideas circulating at that time, and the cultural milieu during the time the piece was written. It investigates how a text manifests the attitudes, beliefs, ideas, and culture of that period. In doing this, the reader or critic will look into the background of a story or a poem in order that he or she will understand the text better. The critic will begin to research what was going on in the world at that time the literary work was being written in order to see if the author either consciously or unconsciously incorporated outside forces into the literary work. Would you like an example?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure! Have you heard of Beowulf? Well, when we read the Anglo-Saxon poem Beowulf, which was written sometime around 700 to 800 AD, we notice that the poet often refers to both pagan gods and rituals and to Christianity. At times, the poet may refer to the pagan concept of fate, weird, and 2 lines later refer to the will of God. Clearly, an intermingling of the Anglo-Saxons' first religion, paganism, with a religion they adopted beginning in about 600 AD, which is Christianity. To understand this mix of religions in the work of literature, critics try to understand exactly how and when the Anglo-Saxon people were converted from paganism to Christianity. So, they look outside the text of Beowulf to see what events led to the transition from paganism to Christianity. And more important for the literary critic, the timing of that transition. Understanding the timing may help literary critics to understand when the poem was composed. The historical approach, then, usually helps the critic and readers to understand all of the events and forces that might affect the author as he or she is composing the work. This gives us a more comprehensive understanding of the work itself. The key goal for historical critics is to understand the effect of a literary work upon its original readers. You got that, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we now proceed with the reader response approach?
Oh yeah.
Perfect! This criticism focuses on what was going in the mind of the reader before, during, and after reading. The critic is not interested on the intention of the author and what kind of text he or she reads. Instead, the meaning is created based on the reader's experience while reading. This means that there is no single meaning since the reader is the one producing it. Additionally, A reader's understanding of a text may change from time to time due to his or her experiences. As readers from different generations, culture, and place can have different understanding. Hence, two different readers may derive completely different interpretations of the same literary text. Likewise, a reader who rereads a work years later may find the work shockingly different. What do you think does this approach emphasize? Correct! Reader response criticism emphasizes how religious, cultural, and social values affect readings. It also overlaps with the gender criticism in exploring how men and women read the same text with different assumptions. In other words, it revolves around the phenomena respond to reading, wherein the reader is the significant and active agent responsible to impart the real meaning of the text by interpreting it. Care for an example? I know! Our example is entitled To Misread or to Rebel, a woman's reading of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, an excerpt. It is certain that women misread The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I did. I found myself initially wishing that Mrs. Mitty would just let Walter daydream in peace. But after reading the story again and paying attention to the portrayal of Mrs. Mitty, I realized that it is imperative that women rebel against the text that would oppress them. By misreading a text, a woman reader understands it in a way that it is conventional and acceptable to the literary world. But in doing so, she is also distancing herself from the text, not fully embracing it or its meaning in her life. But rebelling against the text, the female reader not only has to understand the point of view of the author and the male audience, but she has to formulate her own opinions and create a sort of dialogue between the text and herself. Rebelling against the text and the stereotypes encourages an active dialogue between the woman and the text, which in turn guarantees an active and most likely angry reader response. I became a resisting reader. That's it! Now, your reaction might be different from the given example because your response depends on your experiences as a reader. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Great! This time, let's have some tips in writing both approaches. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Let's start with historical approach. What do you need in writing this? Great thinking! We said a while ago that we need to understand the author's biography and social background, ideas circulating at that time, and the cultural milieu. Therefore, here are the things that you should look into. Number 1. Who wrote it? Know the author. Identify who he or she is. What era did he or she live in? And what kind of life did he or she have? Through this, you will be able to know what the author wants to convey in the story. Number 2. When was it written? Look for its time, like social structure, which includes race, class, and gender roles, culture, or how people lived, values, family structure. Politics, which includes wars, leaders, conflict. Economy can be depressions, recessions, class divisions. Religion could include religious leaders, conflicts, prominence. And intellectual history, like sciences, education, philosophy, and language. Lastly, number 3, what else is happening at the time of its writing? This talks about the situation at that time. Did you note them all?
Yes, ma'am.
Great! What are the things that you should look into in writing a historical approach again? Wonderful! These are author, time, and situation at that period. Splendid! Great job, grade 10!
Yay!
And how about the reader response approach? What are the things that should be in your literary critic? Here they are! In the beginning paragraph, be sure to mention the following. Number 1, title of the work to which you are responding. Number 2, the author. And number 3, the main thesis of the text. After that, do your best to discuss these on your body. Number 1, why you like or dislike the text. Number 2, explain whether you agree or disagree with the author. Number 3, identify the text's purpose. And lastly, critique the text. For example, is the text poorly written, or is it too emotional or too childish, and the likes. And for the conclusion, you can discuss any of the following. Letter A, your overall reaction to the text. B, whether you would read something else like this in the future. C, whether you would read something else by this author. And letter D, if you would recommend this text to someone else, and why. Sounds like a lot to absorb, right? But I know you can do it. Thus, I guess you're now ready to write another literary critic. Remember, there is no right or wrong answer. It is important that you demonstrate an understanding of the reading and clearly explain and support your reactions. Very simple, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But before we proceed with your final task, let's have a simple comprehension test on what we have discussed today. Will you take the challenge?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's the spirit! Let's start!
All right.
Write true if the statement is correct and false if the statement is wrong. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right! Listen attentively. Number 1. The novels of Jose Rizal illustrated how the Spaniards treated the Filipinos when the Philippines was colonized is an example of a historical approach. Is it true or false? I'll repeat. The novels of Jose Rizal illustrated how the Spaniards treated the Filipinos when the Philippines was colonized is an example of a historical approach. What's your answer? Great! That's true! Easy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Next, number 2. Historical criticism talks about culture. Nevertheless, reader response seems to dwell on sharing comments. Again, Historical criticism talks about culture. Nevertheless, reader response seems to dwell on sharing comments. True or false? Tell me your answer. Right! The answer is false because historical criticism involves the wider historical and cultural events happening when the text was written, while reader response is centered on readers' reaction to literature. Let's proceed to number 3. In the reader response, the reader generates his or her own text-related unique performance. Once more, in the reader response, the reader generates his or her own text-related unique performance. True or false? What is the answer? Exactly! That's true because it focuses on the reader and their experience of a literary work. Next, number 4. Reader response scrutinizes both political and social conditions of the literary work. One more time. Reader response scrutinizes both political and social conditions of the literary work. True or false? Answer? Brilliant! The answer is false because historical approach scrutinizes both political and social conditions of the literary work. Let's proceed to number 5. In reader response, there is no correct or wrong answer to a reading response. Let me repeat. In reader response, there is no correct or wrong answer to a reading response. What's the answer? You got it! It is true because the reader's response depends on his or her experiences. How's your score? Wow! You are doing a great job! This time, let us level up your activity by recalling all the different literary approaches that we have learned so far. Can you still remember? Kindly recite them then. Nice! So we have structuralist, formalist, moralist, Marxism, feminist, historical, and reader response. At this point, I will be reading a short summary of the different literary approaches, and I want you to fill in the blanks using the correct literary approach. Again, the choices are structuralist, formalist, moralist, Marxist, feminist, historical, and reader response. Write your answer on your notebook. I'll give you 5 seconds to write your answer. Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
There are 7 approaches in critiquing a literary selection. These are the following: structuralist or formalist, moralist, Marxist, feminist, historical, and reader response. Let us try to discuss each of these approaches. One of these approaches is labeled as a blank, number 1, because it asserts a great deal of meaning in a text depending on certain reactions. I repeat. One of these approaches is labeled as a blank because it asserts a great deal of meaning in a text depending on certain reactions. Next is termed as the number 2 blank approach because it highlights the importance of events, ideas, and attitudes of the time, referring to the literary material that's written. Again, Next is termed as the blank approach because it highlights the importance of events, ideas, and attitudes of the time, referring to the literary material that's written. The blank number 3 approach is centered on valuing ethical ideals or principles. I repeat, the blank approach is centered on valuing ethical ideals or principles. When using the blank approach, number 4, the critic analyzes gender inequality issues. Again, when using the blank approach, the critic analyzes gender inequality issues. Number 5. Blank approach examines how people struggle with life because they view themselves as part of the social and political conditions. Again, blank approach examines how people struggle with life because they view themselves as part of the social and political conditions. Number 6. The blank emphasizes the form of a literary work and other literary elements. Again, the blank emphasizes the form of a literary work and other literary elements. Hence, all these approaches can really enhance literary skills. Alright, let's check your answers. I want you to be very honest in checking your own paper, okay?
Okay!
So, here are the correct answers. Number 1, reader response. Number 2, historical. 3, moralist. 4, feminist. 5, Marxist. And number 6, structuralist or formalist. There you have it! Did you get all the correct answers? Wow! I'm sure you got good scores today because you have been critiquing for a few weeks already. Well done, my dear learners! A round of applause to all of you. Keep it up! I believe you are now ready to do your final task for today. And that is to critique a literary selection based on the historical and reader response approach. Are you ready to give it a try?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent! At this point, I want you to think of a story or selection that you have read before or you would like to read for this activity. Pick a selection of your choice so you can work comfortably. Then, critique the story or selection using the historical or reader response approach. Just remember, do not use the standard approach of just writing. I like this text because it is so cool and the ending made me feel happy. Or, I hated it because it was stupid and had nothing to do with my life and was too negative and boring. In writing a response, do not summarize the context of the text at length. Instead, make a systematic analytical approach to the text. Are we clear on that?
Oh, yeah.
Good! Use one whole sheet of paper or bond paper for your critique. Since reading and critiquing need longer time, once again, I would like you to work on it on your own pace together with the other enhancement activities on your learning activity sheets. Once more, no need to worry. Just follow the tips I gave you. You can do it, grade 10 learners! If you have other clarifications or questions, feel free to reach out to your English subject teachers for guidance and assistance. Wow! We are done once again with another learning adventure. I hope that you learned a lot from today's episode. Keep those learnings coming by tuning in to the #1 educational radio station in SDO Isabela, Radyo Eskwela sa Isabela. On behalf of our scriptwriter, yours truly, together with the whole SDO Isabela RBI production team, this has been your radio teacher Rosalyn saying, the secret of becoming a writer is to write, and keep on writing. So keep on reading and writing, grade 10. Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy. Until next time!
Patuloy ang edukasyon para sa ating henerasyon.
Sa daan ng pagkatuto ay walang may iwan.
Kaya halina sa Radyo Eskwela!